hurry, but I know how to set it up.
This meeting is being recorded.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Gotcha. So, before I start, Herb Sakalok's back here. It's with the Colfax Railroad Museum. You may have been there or not. And he asked for a little time here. So before I get started with my pictures, Herb, you want to take a minute and explain your operation?
Let me ask, show of hands here. Who has been out to the museum? Okay.
Well, on American Pickers.
We were just on American Pickers about a week and a half ago. They came out and filmed in July. I spent about 3 years trying to get them there. We had it all set up to be filmed in the first 2 weeks of July. I set up a vacation to take the grandkids out east. They called the day after I bought tickets and they slipped in 2 weeks. So I'm only on the show as the voice on the phone. But
your son did a good job.
yeah, thank you.
Yes.
That's been roundly said. We've had a number of folks call in the last week with offers of donations of items. We have two major grant programs right now we're working with the state on. There's one with what they call a non-state grant program with Department of Administration. That's a $497,000 grant. And they allowed us to add a copy of that Pickers show to our package quite some time after the closing date. So we're very hopeful on that one. There's also one, the Transportation Alternatives Program with the Department of Transportation. We're not so sure on that one. The state has played games with this program. There's three parts to it: bike trails, safe routes to schools, and transportation museums. The bike trail folks have kind of stolen the program. We were the only applicants last year for the museum side, and they rated us as if we were a bike trail. And the Bike Federation is the one that gets to do some of the ratings on us. So we're hoping this year, now that they've got the State Historical Society involved, there might be a little more leavening of the reviews. Those are matching fund grants. The DOA one with the 497 is a 1-for-1. The TAP program is a 4-for-1. They will match $4 for every dollar we raise. So we may be coming out with funding requests here in the next 6 months or so. The smaller one is due by the end of May. The larger one is due by the end of August. Actually, larger one is due by the end of May. Smaller one's due the end of August. We have added a lot to the museum in the last 10 years. We have both depots now that are part of Colfax, part of the museum. About 10 years ago, there was a tornado that hit Colfax, took out half the roof on one side on the wooden depot. The museum acquired the property. We now have an event center, a library and archives, and a model railroad club that we're trying to get started there. I was just saying to this gentleman, back in November, we picked up 1,800 more railroad books for the museum. We have about 3,500 railroad hardbacks, about 2,000 softbounds, and about 3,000 periodicals. Plus, we have all the track plans for the state of Wisconsin sewer line, all the existing drawings from Northwestern Motor Company, a lot of artwork. It's a major addition there. We also have a miniature train ride now, first and third Saturdays of the month. We have some artifacts here that I brought to the museum tonight from some of the local railroads. Lanterns from the Rice Lake, Dallas, and Menomonie, along with a ticket. There was a Wisconsin Central picnic invitation from the 1880s. We've got pictures of the depots back in that time period. We also have some brochures on the museum. We hope to see you folks out there this year. With the NMRA convention coming in May, we are going to be on the tour for that on Sunday. And we are going to have a model railroad show in Colfax at the fairgrounds, August 31st. We'll be setting up Friday night, and then the show will be Saturday. So, Arlyn, thank you for the.
You betcha.
If anybody's got
It's a great museum. If you haven't been out there, you need to get out there and stuff. All right, we got a little behind schedule, but we'll get through here. First off, it's a little small because I'll move over to the side. Don't worry. I know the room's a little small. If we turn that light off, then you can't do the Zoom. Is that correct?
No, we can.
So would it show up better? Just kick them off once. Would you rather see that way or with the light on?
This way.
Okay. All right. I'm Arlyn Colby from Barron, and I always liked trains. I was a high school teacher and coach And when I retired, I said, what can I do with my interest? Well, I didn't know I'd get into so many things. But what, by the way, that picture right over there, anybody recognize that bridge?
Yeah, just Menomonie going over the Red
That's,
Cedar.
it's over the Red Cedar right up here on the edge of, along 94.
Okay.
Exactly. So I said, I grew up in Trumbull County. I went to Levistrom High School, and a railroad ran right by our high school across the river, and I wanted to learn about it. So I said, I'll write a book. And so I researched, put stuff into a book. It went pretty good. I said, that was kind of fun. Maybe I should do another one. Well, now I've done 7, and I'm working on the 8th, and it'll be ninth next year. So once you start researching, getting into it, it's really fun. It takes an awful lot of time on the computer and so on, but people like the books and so on. So I got 6 picture shows lined up. And when I'm putting this together, I was putting up some other ones, and every one is customized to the crowd. So the pictures you're going to see tonight, most of them are not in my books. Because if you want to see those, some of you probably own one of the books, or you can buy one or something. Rather than repeat a book, I thought I'd do something a little different, try and make it interesting. We're going to jump all over the place. But I found people like learning a little bit about history, and it's a little dark right now, but does anybody know what this thing is? You know, you'd think it'd be mail because it looks like that, but it's too lightweight. The mail would be very heavy.
Messages to
the engineer and
An order hoop, exactly. Before a train can go by a station, they must have their orders. They can't just go down the track and hope nothing's there. And so, in the old days, they telegraph from one station to the next, the orders. The depot agent would write them on a piece of paper or type them, put them on this little clip right here, and the engineer and conductor on the caboose both had to receive these. So they stick out their arm when the train, if the train stops, it takes a while. So the train keep going, and you grab the hoop like this, and then you take the orders off and read them, and the train can keep on going. The only problem is he still had the hoop here, and now the train's still going, so you throw it down on the ground, and the agent would have to walk way down the track, and if you missed it, you had to stop the train back up, by the way. You had to have those orders. So they got ingenious, and they made a improved hoop. Now this one's kind of neat. So they get the orders again, tied on a piece of string, and then when they went by, the engineer conductor would put their arm in here, they'd snap that string right out of the clip, and all they took is the string. The depot agent still had his stick. And then he could tie another string, but that's a lot easier than walking through the snow and getting the hoop and so on. Of course, once the radios, telephones came out and stuff like that, then this is obsolete. But it's pretty ingenious, pretty cool. So I'm glad some of you, by the way, if you have any comments, questions, I don't pretend to be an expert. I brought Mike Doney along, so any question I have, Mike can answer. But maybe we can figure out something that's fun if you have a little audience participation. So feel free to ask any questions and so on. So let's see, what do we have next? Oh, sometimes this thing goes too fast. As most of you know, Menomonie was a big nap stout lumber yard. And this is a neat picture of it. So this is right up where the dam is right now. And they'd float the logs down the Red Cedar River, cut them up in the sawmill, and then float them down the river to their destination. And this is a little later one here, but about the same thing. Now you go up through there, you don't see any of that kind of stuff, obviously. This is a little later shot after Knapp Stout is gone. This is 1935. And it's an aerial now. There's Highway 25 up there. So Knapp Stout would have been all in this right here. So this bridge is still there. I don't know the details, but I know it's blocked off. It'd be pretty nice to be part of the trail. I bet you somebody's trying to figure that out and so on.
They can't, one of the piers on it is shift.
Oh, it is?
Right.
Okay. So, in this picture, what most interesting thing to me, Eau Claire had one of these too. Anybody know what that thing is right there? That it's kind of small right there. It looks sort of like a building.
It looks like cedar sawdust or
No,
something.
no. That is what's a proper word? It's a gas plant. and it's coal gas, and this is an inflatable bubble right here. So when they made the coal gas, it inflated that thing and it went up. Can you see the little superstructure up here? And then that gas is what they pipe to their lights to light their wick and stuff. That was their earliest electric lights in town.
It's still there. West Michigan is for their map building.
Oh,
The building's still there, but the dome isn't, or whatever you call it.
yeah. Well, thank you. I'm gonna go check that out.
Yeah.
I don't live that far away, but unless you know it, you don't go look for something like that.
Right.
Okay, this is also Menomonie, and this is I don't know. There's a microbrewery down in the old Omaha Depot right now. I can't remember the name. I haven't been in there. And down on the south end at the depot right there, that's a trailhead for the bike walking trail. So the Milwaukee Road came in from the south, and here's their little engine house and their little turntable. And then the Omaha came in from the north. You'll see some pictures over to here.
And there was a connecting track between them.
Yes, there was. So they could interchange. Yes, sir. You buy my book, you see the track right here. Just kidding. All right. Does anybody know what this track is out here? Brickyard. Menomonie was very famous for brickyards. A friend of mine wrote an article. How many brickyards? 5, 7 at one time? 5, I think it was. And so there are a lot of buildings made out of the bricks and stuff. Pretty cool. And anytime you live along a river, whether it's the Chippewa River, Eau Claire River, Red Cedar, you're going to have flood problems. And I just grabbed that one from 1905. So this would be, Napstow would be right over in this area up there. So we're looking down south, right from underneath that bridge, that overhead bridge. And there's that same flood. The track, by the way, the first Milwaukee depot was up where Red Cedar Lake. Lake Menomonie is right now. When they built the dam, it flooded that area, and I didn't put any pictures, but that's the original depot. It's way up underwater where it'd be right now. And they actually ran up to, Cedar Falls.
Okay.
There's a lumber mill there, so they ran up to Cedar Falls.
And the tracks are still underneath water if you go there when before it gets green in the spring. Al Wallace took us up there around Wolski Bay, and you can see the tracks.
Cool.
Water. So,
Cool.
You know, get a group together on a Sunday and do that in the spring, and you'll have another part for another book.
Awesome. And there's a little more of the flood. And this is down by the Omaha now, yards down through here. And the depot, I guess, is right down in here. So.
The round tower there in the middle of the photo, isn't that the water tower for the steamers?
I'm not sure. Dan told me one time. I haven't seen a separate picture of the water tower for that, so I'm not sure.
Stockyards were down there, city shop, where city shop is now.
Yep.
That's from the brewery.
This is kind of a neat picture from, in wartime when soldiers went off, everybody came out and greeted. Or said goodbye, cried, you know, and stuff like that. And it just brought out a show of support. So there's a train hauling them out. This is kind of a neat shot. About 2 weeks ago, a man by the name of Kurt Richards lives in California. He used to live in Menomonie, but his dad took a bunch of pictures back in 1937, and he sent them to me. So I scanned them, had to clean them up a little bit. The Omaha Railroad, you see pictures of later, is still the Union Pacific up there. So the depot down here, that's where I am, was at a dead end. Mainline trains did not come in there. So to get the people from downtown out to the junction, they ran these little sprint trains. And what were they? I was going to look up the name again. But
it was the Menomonie Railroad.
It was the Menomonie Railroad, but I think they commonly call them not the Dinky or Scoot or something like that, you know. And they ran many times a day back and forth out to the main line. There were a lot of passenger trains that ran out there. You'd catch up with the Viking, the Northwestern, of course the 400 we'll get into, and so on. But they just run back and forth, that little distance right there. Here's a picture. We're just talking about the bridge they got fixing up. Here's a train coming in. They didn't come in very often, but there are a couple industries at the end, and unfortunately, a friend of mine got a few, and that's going over 94. There's a feed mill up at kind of the top of the hill there. This is Menomonie Junction, it's called. So this is the main line that still exists out there, the Union Pacific. And this would be the Y track. Yeah, a Y can go either left or right. And that's what ran down. So I'm not sure about that water tower because they had one out here at the main line. So I think it was something different. I just can't remember exactly what it is right now. But that's a cool picture. It's a mainline train, obviously. It's got a lot of passenger cars going from Minneapolis, St. Paul, probably to Chicago. I'm pretty sure. People always like these little machines right here. I don't know what you want to call them, a hand car, a pump car. And before motorized vehicles came, that's what they do. They pump up and down. They look like fun, don't they? I tried it once. It takes a lot of power to get that gearing going and stuff. Downhill's not bad, but uphill, you need two people on it. It's not as much fun as it looks, to tell you the truth. There's a depot on the main line. And one time it was double tracked all the way from Minneapolis to Yville. So double track means trains can go on one track and the other direction they go on the other track. You don't have to worry about getting out of the way. But when they took off all the fast passenger trains, traffic went down, they single track. They took one out. This is a great picture. That's the first depot that was in Menomonie. So, I don't know, late 1800s. And so Highway 25 would be right back over there. You know, it goes around that curve. So that's where the original depot was, on the west side of Menomonie Junction. Yep. Here's a little handcar with a couple guys.
It always looks so heavy.
You know, I did read when they came out with gasoline engines, the railroad, Chicago Northwestern Omaha, allowed guys to buy their own gasoline engine to put on it. They wouldn't even supply that. They'd supply the car, but you buy the gasoline engine. That's how cheap they were. It just seems ridiculous now. There were several passenger trains, and I don't know them all very good, but probably the most famous one was the 400, and this is the 400. And these cars, you'll see some colors, were yellow and green, and they were streamlined for speed. Get people to Chicago from Minneapolis as fast as you can, because there were three major railroads that ran from Minneapolis to Chicago, and they competed for the traffic, passenger traffic. The other two followed the Mississippi River, the Burlington and the Milwaukee, which became the Canadian Pacific and stuff. So, but these trains, there's a Viking, okay, with a steam engine. That guy, that from Kurt, I think I got one more. There's another, not a very good shot. That's a Northwestern Limited. So now you're seeing three different passenger trains there, and there were more than that. Now, these shorter ones would make more stops, but like 400 only had certain stops. I mean, they took off. They stopped at Menomonie, Eau Claire, and then I think next one is Yville, because they interchanged with the train that went out to the Dakotas. And so things happen on railroads sometime. I haven't researched this, but this is an Omaha train, or two, that one didn't stop quite fast enough. 1881. Fortunately, somebody had a camera, a pretty good picture for 1881. I'll come back to that 400. This is the Milwaukee Road Depot on the south side out here. That's a railhead right now. A lot more trees are growing up, of course, and stuff right now. This picture is listed. No, this one's on the UW Stout website. And it's a Milwaukee Road train, supposedly taken in Menomonie, because this is a Stout, I put it on there? Yeah, symphonic singers leaving for New York and Washington. And they were sent off with a band and stuff. I can't recognize this, and I asked a lot of my friends that location at all. And it's hard enough, I know, for you to see. It's hard to believe it's not Eau Claire, because there's buildings, a house back here, in any direction you go, there aren't any houses go in that direction on the Milwaukee Road around here. But it's a stout people, so it almost has to be Menomonie. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Got an idea?
Do you think maybe they went down the Red Wing and caught it? Just a thought.
Yeah, that's a great thought. This is too rural for Red Wing, because that's a real industrial area down there in the mill and stuff. Oh, that's a great idea. It's not Winona either then. All right. We're not going to spend any time on it, but I thought that was pretty interesting. That's one of the brickyards.
Wow.
My friend Dan Hansen wrote an article for the Milwaukee Road magazine. You'd have to go, but he had like 20 pages of the brickyard. So really great history on that. And I like this car. They're loading bricks into a boxcar. Which it's great. Boxcars about all you had. But you know how heavy bricks are? And these are wooden floor cars. Underneath here are rods called turnbuckles. And you see there, it's like a clevis. You can tighten them to keep the floor level. I bet you they didn't put many bricks high in there, or that bottom would be falling right out.
It looks from the picture, it looks like they went to about halfway up.
Yeah. And I bet you that was a load then even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Maybe over the axles too.
yeah, exactly. Probably more over the axles than in the middle. Good point. I like this picture. I don't ride my bike often enough, but if you know somebody's a biker, you are yourself. You guys got the greatest bike trail to me in the state, the world. You don't have tunnels like the 400 trail down there, but it's just awesome down through there. It's a winter scene. And Eau Claire to Durand isn't too bad either, especially from Caryville down. But so when I ride my bike out there are all kinds of people out walking there all the time and stuff. It's really cool that you folks have it here. And there's a little shot of it without the snow. This is one of my all-time favorites. Got this from the Dunn County Historical Society. We're at Irvington. Irvington, what, 5 miles south of here or so? I don't know. These guys are from Knapp Stout, and the lumber company set up some, and these aren't logs or timbers, you know what those are? Pickets, yeah, we call them laths. And a lot of the old houses had laths when they were built in there, you know, to hold the insulation and stuff. And so they loaded them on this raft, and they take them down to Dunnville. Then they put like 3, maybe 5 together until they get down to the Chippewa River. Then they put more of them together. When they get down to Mississippi, they tie more. Then they got a great big raft, you know, of 20, 30 of them and stuff like that.
Beef Slough, isn't it? Down there by south of Nelson is Beef Slough.
Beef Slough had their own lumber company down there. That was not an Knapp Stout. That was part of the Weyerhaeuser.
Okay.
Down at Chip Falls. Yep. My point here is, these guys, say this is going to St. Louis. How long do you think it's going to take that raft to get to St. Louis? All of a sudden, about 1900, the lumber companies were closing down, but the railroads came in. You know what's on this flat car? Lumber. You know what's in all these box cars?
Lumber.
Lumber. How long do you think it's going to take that train to get to St. Louis? Depends on where they get stuck in the yard. Definitely less than a week, I would hope, you know, and stuff. This is going to take them, what, 3 months, 2 months to at least to get to St. Louis? And if they're floating logs down, which they did sometime, you know how dirty? They're full of water to try and saw, mud and everything. Now everything's dry, enclosed, except one open car there. But that ended, obviously, the rafting of the lumber and stuff. Yeah, also, between Downsville and Chippewa River are the quarries, the sandstone quarries. And they had, I gotta go back and read my book. I finished that one about 10 years ago. How many, like 3 companies down there? And you take the sandstone, well, the Mabel Tainer here is made out of the sandstone from the Dunnville quarries down there. When you cut it out, apparently it's very porous. You can cut it, but as you leave it exposed to the elements, it dries out and gets quote, rock hard. And they ship that stuff all over the country. New York City and everything made it there. You ride your bike down through there, it doesn't look like that now because it's pretty overgrown, but they have put up some signage and you see some relics of some of the stuff that was making this sandstone. Yeah, it's quite a business. I think you call these things like steam donkeys. They have the power to run these jib cranes to lift these heavy blocks. See where they're putting the blocks over the axles here? And that's how they ship it out. There's a movie DVD out by a guy who used to work there. It's a pretty good one. I don't know if they have it in the library here or something, but I can't remember the guy's name right now, but it's pretty awesome. You ride your bike down far enough, you come to the Chippewa River down there, and this bridge is still in existence down there. Pretty cool. I remember the first time I rode my bike down and it came around, holy mackerel, I didn't know anything about it. It's really pretty cool. That's a picture that I told you was at the first there. Okay, Larry Bond was a student at UW Stout, and he wasn't a railroad fan, but he was in a photography class, and he had to do something unique for class. So he got the bright idea of going out, and the train was stopped at the junction there. He went and talked to the engineer and said, hey, don't be surprised. I'll be out by this trestle out there. I'm going to shoot a picture. So the engineer, they can make extra smoke however they do that. So coming across, he kicked that baby down or whatever you do, and he made a real good picture. And then Larry Bond's friend, Henry Taw, was down a little lower. He took a picture of the same train going there. So I thought that was pretty cool. And there's a little earlier time, a train going over that trestle.
Now, it's possible our museum has the mail cards in that picture.
Huh.
Because we have, it is, at the museum, it is the oldest standard gauge mail car in the country. It's an Omaha route car.
Cool. This is the second book I did, Chippewa Valley Line. It's a Milwaukee Road. That's a train that came into the south side here to the trailhead. It came up through Duran. It came from Wabasha to Reed's Landing. You'll see a couple more pictures here. But along with the bike trails, I'm a member of that speeder club that runs from Duran down there. So I got really interested in the area, so I thought I'd do a book. And this is that railroad. Wabasha is right down here. And the river's about a mile wide through here. So to get to the other side into Wisconsin, they built this picket fence. Might as well have been to come across the river. And that's real good, but with the flooding, the ice and everything, can you imagine the problem you'd have trying to maintain that? So they got a little smart and they filled in part of it. Wisconsin's over there. This is up on the bluff at Reed's Landing. This is called a pontoon. It was a 400-foot, I call it Noah's Ark. It's essentially what it was. But to allow the steamboats to get through, or the log rafts and stuff, lumber rafts, they had to have an opening for them. And so they put this thing here on a pivot on one end, and then it could swing open. And then to close it, this is a little steamboat. They had a winch that could winch it shut again. And I think most of the time, also, that bridge was adjustable up and down with the height of the river. Guys would have to go and hand crank that thing up and down. I was kind of waiting for a question because most people say, what are those things out there?
That's the bridge. Nice.
Could have used them in Baltimore.
They are supposedly icebreakers to break up the ice. And how well they worked, I don't know. They were put up there, so they must have worked to some extent at least. This is the train going across that. And I can't see the year up there right now. But the photographer's standing in the Mississippi River. Would you say it was a drought? The water is really low at that time. But I really like this picture. It's just awesome. There's so much stuff here. One thing, in the old days, a lot of the boxcars were, we call them billboard. They're painted for what they're hauling, whether it be cheese or a beer or meat or something like that. It was really cool until the government outlawed that.
Where is this?
This is at Reed's Landing.
Where's that?
Oh,
Wabasha?
yeah, about 4 miles north of Wabasha.
Okay. All right.
It's a little town right there.
All right.
Yep. Can you see what that is right there? It's a guy riding on top of the car.
Brakeman.
Before they had air brakes on this stuff, when they wanted to stop the train, the engineer would give some kind of a signal, and the brakeman on top would have to run from car to car and turn down the hand brakes to put the brakes on the cars to stop the train.
Is that another one to the left of him? Or is that
Right here?
No. Just across.
Yeah, it could be right there. It'd be really hard to get across his lumber car up there. So this guy might have been responsible for the coach baggage and that car, and this guy for the rest of them there. Probably.
And in the wintertime, they rode the top of the cars too.
Can you imagine with the wind, the ice, the snow? It was a dangerous job.
Yeah, it was there's pictures in Leslie's magazine that showed them up there with their buffalo blankets on, just trying to stay warm. But that was where a lot of the deaths occurred. So guys would have hypothermia, fall asleep, and go underneath the cars.
The government finally got smart, and supposedly it's supposed to happen by 1900 that they'd have to have air brakes on all the cars. And the other thing that was required, a little hard for you folks to see, the couplers in the old days were link and pin. So the two cars would have a round link, and you'd have to go in there and shove a spike, let's call it, a big pin in there to hold them. So you're in there when the engine's trying to back up and put that pin in there, guys are losing fingers, hands, arms, bodies. So they said, we're going to a knuckle coupler. So they came with that they still use right now. But it didn't happen overnight with all the cars and stuff like that. So the other thing on this one, you'll see another picture later. Anybody know what that little thing is on the back of the engine? That's a lantern or a headlight. These engines didn't always go this way. They're switching, you had to back up, and to see what's going on, they had a headlight on the back end of the tender. A guy sent me this, and it's a really cool picture. The problem is, that's not at Reed's Landing. I couldn't use it in the book. This one's down at Marquette, Michigan. There were 4 of these kind of bridges made. 1 at Reed's Landing, 2 here. This is still in Mississippi, so Minnesota over to Prairie du Chien. And there were 2 of them, one over this channel, one over this channel. But the main highway 18 goes right here, so people took a lot of pictures of trains going over from that highway. But you get down Reed's Landing, there's no place to take a picture. So, but what a cool picture. And the 4th one is out in South Dakota, at Chamberlain, South Dakota. There, it's that bridge down at Marquette opened up, and so the toll can go through there. Still had icebreakers there. Okay. In 1951, ice took out that bridge down here at Reed's Landing, so they couldn't go across anymore. So then the trains went down to what's called Trevino, just at the river. They jumped on the Burlington tracks, went down to Winona to access Winona. So that's how they didn't use that anymore. So it wasn't used after 1951. Now I'm going to jump up to Eau Claire. I thought we were going to jump around a lot. What's interesting here, here's Eau Claire and here's Chippewa Falls. There were 4 railroads running between Eau Claire and Chippewa Falls. There's still 1, okay? So the top one here is the Milwaukee Road, that Chippewa Valley line I talked about that came through here. So it came up through Eau Claire and went up through here. The Sioux line had a line here that was just made into a bike path. Oh, the years go fast, 4 or 5 years ago. So you see blacktop along Old 53. The Omaha The railroad that ran on the north side out here had one here. So they were side by side all the way up there. And there was one in between them. Anybody know what the one in between them was?
Trolley line.
The trolley or electric line. Yep. It actually ran down the south end of Eau Claire, Shawtown, actually ran out to Altoona. I think it would be very interesting to see a book on that someday. Herb would do that though. But there's neat pictures, so they got a lot of them from the museums and stuff. But this one is one of my favorite. That's an Eau Claire. And the street right here is Barstow Street. So we're looking up towards U.S. Royal, U.S. Rubber up there, Uniroyal and stuff, looking that way. This is the original Milwaukee Road passenger depot they took out in 37 or 38. Passengers weren't using it. But there's a lot of neat stuff on this picture. First, billboards on all the buildings for advertising. Pretty cool. The streets weren't blacktop. You know what they're made out of? Bricks. Is that the same as cobblestone? Not this cobble. Okay.
Cobblestone was granite generally. There was ballast.
Oh.
Cobblestone was ballast out of ships generally, and that's what then they unloaded them out of the ships and the streets out of the ballast. Up in St. Paul and stuff.
Okay. Before I forget it, see the headlight on this engine? When they're up there, they couldn't turn the engine around, so to back up, they'd have a headlight right there. This is a crossing gate. These crossing gates weren't automatic in the old days. How'd they work? A guy that was stationed in this little octagonal house, a little eight-sided, would have to be there, and when if a train was coming, he'd have to run out and push these down. Then he'd stand out in the street that said, watch, stop. Yeah, stop sign. Actually, it looks like they're shingling it right now. They got a ladder, guys up there.
Sometimes they have a lantern, they swing lantern back and forth. And as you got your first electric crossing gates, won't follow function. They have a light swung back and forth.
Yep, the old wood-like signals. But you know what? To me, the most interesting thing is this right here. Anybody know what that is? That's the streetcar tracks. It's a little hard to see. They have to go from this side over to this side. But when two railroads cross, there's a special crossing. What's the word?
T.
We call it a crossing.
Diamond.
A diamond. There you go. Gee, don't know my. All right. The Milwaukee Road wouldn't let them put it in there. Now the first electric railroads were actually horse-drawn down there. But what they do, they come out here, have to stop, and then they have to push the cars across the track to get back on over the track over here. So I don't know anymore when the Milwaukee Road did eventually. Maybe electric went away before they had to put a diamond in or something. But there's just an awful lot of history in that one picture. All right, we hit those. This is that shot, but looking the other way. So there's that depot. Now we're looking down towards Durand. Can you imagine in the old days when steam engines, how much smoke and soot there was? Plus, everybody was burning coal in their houses to stay warm. Plus, there were a couple of factories in Eau Claire that made a little smoke. Most obvious is Uniroyal.
Arlyn, we can testify to that. The depot in Colfax, the wooden one, we've been working there, and we worked. When the tornado hit, they took out a lot of the outside roofing, but we had clouds of cinders come down the walls because they had just wooden wainscoting there for ceilings and such. So I usually look like I was blackface after I worked there just from soot that came down there, 50 years after.
Why did women ever wash clothes and hang it out on the line or something, I guess, huh? So, anyway, I like these old pictures. Look at the old trucks and stuff. There's Uniroyal in 46. At wartime, the government took that over and made munitions there. just a little bit of history. So this is the Omaha. That track is still in there. It's Union Pacific. This is the Milwaukee Road that goes up to Chippewa Falls. The Sioux Line depot is down here, and they shared a track with the Milwaukee. Then they crossed this unique bridge, which is called an S Bridge. It's still there. You can go walking, biking across that.
It's over 100 years old.
Yeah. One of my goals is to go across, and not much I will clear. I don't take time. And you go across it. Also, there's a turntable right down here for turning engines, steam engines. So that's where they turn them around. So I won't get too deep in Eau Claire, but that's a pretty cool picture. Ah, this is Barstow Street right here. So that depot would have been right here, and that's all facilities down there, and so on. But I cook with gas. Look what they have. Coal gas plant. 1938. Cool shot. You go down there now, what do you see? A pavilion right on the, yeah, and they have a lot of outdoor stuff going on, and apartment buildings, and a little restaurant here and there and stuff. You'd never guess a railroad run through there if you go down there now.
There's the original station from Eau Claire.
That's the Omaha Railroad Station, right, the first one in Eau Claire. And Madison Street is right over here going down the hill, so we're looking toward the west.
Stone building then?
There's a stone rock, yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
yep.
Brownstone from Fort Wayne, Wisconsin, maybe?
I can't remember where it came from. You might be right.
Yeah, red stone.
It's red stone, yeah. That makes sense. That's where the red stone,
That's
yeah.
where the red stone is, and you can't harvest it in Wisconsin. Where are you gonna get it from overseas? Our building, so please, if you've got any at home, save it,
Save it.
save it. Being somewhere, the buildings they tore down, they've got the stone buried in it. The depot, they called that stone away somewhere, somebody saved it. I don't remember the story.
I've heard a lot of stories
Yeah.
about it. The latest one I have, somebody built a building out of it. It's their house or something, part of it, not all of it.
Right.
And it's outside of town a little bit. I don't know who, but I have heard that.
I've heard that too.
So inside is pretty fancy. Okay, now we'll get to the fancy trains. This is the 400. Remember I said that yellow and green ran from Minneapolis to Chicago. Excluding Mr. Herb and maybe Mike and some other rail fans there. Why was it called the 400?
400 miles and 400 minutes.
It almost exactly 400 miles in 400 minutes.
297.
Yeah, right. It's real close, but it's so close to call it the 400. Yep. And crack train. Now, before we go on, this is called the switch tower. So there'd be an operator up there, and he could throw the switches down here. He actually turned the signals on, the gates and stuff, all through a system of piping up here. Hope I put it in here. Yeah. The switch tower now still exists, yep. Anybody know where it is? Carson Park. That's in Carson Park. Yep. So Uniroyal's right here.
It was also the first electric tower in Wisconsin.
Ah, it's the first, I remember reading that, first electric interlocking. So that's pretty cool. It guarantees you can't screw up the switches and get two trains running together. You're right. Now, it's covered up here, but this is not the 400. This is the 401. Everybody called the train the 400, but railroads, when they go east, are even numbered trains. When they go west, are odd numbered trains. So the 400 that went to Chicago turned right around, but used the 401 coming back. And usually they were consecutive numbers. They didn't have to be, like 394, 395. They could be a little gap, but they're even and odd. But everybody calls it the 400.
You know where the 400 and the 401, they had to meet somebody.
Yeah.
They met at Adams, Wisconsin. That's
Yep.
exactly halfway between St. Paul and Chicago.
There you go.
So at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the 401 and the 400 met there. I grew up in Adams, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
That's how I know it. I used to ride the 400 a lot, but yeah, both trains would meet there.
Did you work for Northwestern?
I did. Yeah.
What was your position?
Conductor.
You were?
Yeah.
probably doing this for me here. This picture's a
You're
little
doing
fuzzy,
you're doing a good job.
but when I saw this picture back in the 80s, A. Robert Johnson did a picture show at London Square Mall for train fans. I saw that picture, I go, wow, because this is all red up here. And that train coming by Fall Creek hit a herd of cows. And as I understand to this day, if you hit animals like that, what they usually do, go to the next town, call the fire department, bring out the fire trucks, hose that baby off there, because it's going to start stinking. I don't know if you can get the blood off right away, you know, but it would be terrible. So that hit a herd of cows. 400 down through Fall Creek, Augusta, was routinely going 90 miles an hour. If you go back 400 miles in 400 minutes, it means you're averaging 60 miles an hour. Now that's pretty good. And in the old days, they didn't have this big fancy ribbon rail track, 136 pounds. They were probably running on 80, 90 probably at that time. But they had section crews working on that all the time. It's in pretty good shape. The other thing about this is the bridge that still exists out here at the pulp and paper is right down there. So anyway,
The old Clare Bridge.
Yeah, the old Clear Bridge.
yeah, there was two of them now. The other one is a walking bridge now too, the
Right.
original one. I don't know if I have that in here, but the 400 is noted for their unique round tail end cars. And I don't think many other railroads had the round one like that. They had a lot of different ones and stuff. The last 400 ran on July 23rd, 1963. And it's probably most of you know, there is a group that's been working like 25 years to try and get passenger service back from the Twin Cities to Eau Claire. So they say they're proceeding, you know. Anything with a railroad goes slow, I tell you. So in 1959, everybody kept asking me about, how about the 400 wreck on Knapp Hill? I heard about it, so I actually did a research and wrote an article for the Northwestern magazine, and I got some pretty neat pictures. Most of you kind of know Knapp is to the west here, I don't know what, 15, 20 miles or something like that. And there's a big hill. You go on 94, you got to go up that big hill. So the railroad's just to the north of that. And this train derailed, and this is Highway 12 right down here. When I say down, we're up on a big bluff, you'll see. And so that train derailed, and fortunately there are a bunch of trees over there that stopped it. And the force of it, look what it did to the rail even. After I did the article, a guy came up and gave me a bunch of pictures, color pictures, which are cool. But look at the cars down there. Can you imagine if that car full of people would have rolled down that embankment? You know, they weren't sitting in there with seatbelts. Can you imagine how bumpy a ride that had to be? Some are sitting at tables eating. Nobody was killed. A lot of people were taken by Eau Claire buses, mostly to the Menomonie Hospital. Most of them were just scratches, bruised. There might have been a couple broken bones and stuff, but they really got away pretty lucky.
It was a noisy day. I was in Menomonie helping a guy work on a house that day. Man, sirens, you hear sirens all over.
Did they say what caused?
Well, I think in your book, they worked on the track,
They had been working on the track.
and there was something they didn't do, or they,
Apparently they didn't spike it very good, and one of the rails rolled over.
Was
The-
it in the
and-
summertime?
yeah.
In July,
It
wasn't
was
it?
about 100
Yeah.
degrees. It was
July.
hot.
Well, then that was probably caused by they call it a sun kink.
It was very hot day.
The rail will blow out in the hot weather, and I've been in some accidents myself caused by sun kink.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. This is the first train over the repair job. The normal speed, I can't read my article again, was, I don't know, 55, 60 or so going over there. They were down to 25 miles an hour. Fortunately, huh? But the rail stood good enough for the engines to get across, but the cars didn't. Oop. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. When doing my books, I've learned a lot that I never knew existed. Oh, I gotta show you this one right here. This one was actually taken in Barron. This is a special Barron where I live. Most of you know where that is. This is a special car called a poultry car. It hauled chickens. I imagine we could have ducks, geese in there. And every so often, a poultry buyer would come. Now, rather than me reading this, I'm going to read this because it's a little hard off the screen. This was in the Barron paper. Let's see if I can see it. The site at the depot was an interesting one. A special poultry car for shipping poultry had been provided. This car is arranged with coops on either side with an aisle down the center of the car. The coops are 5 tiers high, and a car when full will hold 5,000 chickens. The farmers were lined up to await their turn at the car. As each man drove up, the chickens and coops in which they were brought were placed upon a scale and weighed. The chickens were then taken from the coops and put right into the coops in the car, after which the empty coops were reweighed and their weight deducted from the gross weight, leaving the exact weight of the fowls each coop contained. Weigh bills in the nature of an order or check were then given to the Normanna Savings Bank for payment. The buyers paid 7 cents per pound for old hens and 12 cents per pound for spring chickens. The frightened fowls made a terrible commotion as they were taken from the coops and placed in the car. One would think he had gotten into a great barnyard at feeding time to hear the noise. Mr. Gerke, the purchaser, was apparently well satisfied with the business done here and will doubtless return next year for another load. These went down to all the branch lines. I just put this picture because it's pretty clear. One of my hobbies is model railroading. I went to the Eau Claire train store and they had a poultry car. And so I tried to model it. I don't have very fancy wagons, but I bought some coops and painted the chickens in them so they're loading them in there and stuff. Now, here's what's really weird. I went back home and looked at the picture. Every railroad car has a number. The number of this car is 682. You're going to have trouble seeing on this. You know what the number of the model that I bought is? 682. Well, now, you know, that's not an exact model, but it's so close. If I didn't tell you that, you'd think it's the exact one. So it's kind of a special scene along with the pickle factory I built and stuff. All right. I threw some other stuff. There's the Boyceville Depot. Did I skip one? No. There's the Wheeler Depot.
Now, Boyceville is still around.
It was, I remember that now. They moved it out, but it's a deplorable shape, I heard.
Yes.
It's out in the country.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's north of town, one of the back roads there. It's on a farm, it's right by the road. If I remember right, there's a bend in the road right next to the farm there.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
This is Knapp, the town of Knapp. And there's a train coming from Menomonie from the east. There's their depot. What's kind of neat, it's hard to see on here. The guy taking the picture is standing here, and this is a big ramp. Do you know what this building that he is at is? It's a coaling ramp. They send the coal cars up here. That's a walkway. And then they could unload, open the bottom, and they go into a hopper so they could refill coal in the steam engine tenders. There are some pictures there. I don't think I have one in here.
We have one.
You have a picture of
Northeastern coaling station.
You have a picture of the pusher engine that was in that?
No.
Because they had a pusher engine there.
Yep.
To push the trains up over Wilson Hill.
Yep.
And then you back down and wait for the next.
You got a picture for me?
No, but I remember seeing it as a kid.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
them depot brackets, I think I have them. They put them on Goodman's feed mill, and the Goodman building was still up there. And I salvaged them when they tore the building down. So,
Thank you for saving them. Make sure they go to a good
well,
home.
I know that's why we got to save this stuff, but then we got to get the pictures to correlate. So
Correlate.
that
Yep.
we can prove it.
There are probably a lot more pictures to nap. I'm not doing that, so I just
Right.
included something here. Oop. All right. Now I'm going to jump around a little bit.
Ice house.
It looks sort of like it, but it's not an ice house.
Okay.
Okay, when I started doing that Menomonie line book, I went to Osseo, and they said this lady by the name of Lois Gunderson's got a bunch of old pictures of town and stuff. So I drove on the country, nice lady, still living and everything. She gave me this picture. I said, wow, this is a place called Lindeman. Anybody know where Lindeman is? Osseo would be about 3 miles this way, 2-3 miles. And this is Buffalo or Beef River, whichever you prefer, going down through there. This is a flour mill. And what's unique about it, it's a buckwheat. It's what they're specialized in. Now, in my book, I got another picture I didn't put in, but they put another structure right here. So these houses are still here. And they built a little dam here so they have power. I said, what a neat picture, but look at it, it's got all those, watermarks on them? So I went out and bought Photoshop elements, not knowing a thing about it. Started playing around with it, and it came out like that. And that's a lot of years ago. I've done a lot of pictures since then, but also I'm still proud of the first picture I did. And if you're not going to be doing it, but what you do, you blow this thing up, then you grab pixels right next to it and paste them over that. Copy and paste all those things like that. And then the sky, you just make it all white. You paint it out all white. That's easy. Then you can brighten it. Actually, now they have a sharpen button that I don't know if we have. You can make the picture sharper even. But it came out like that. I was pretty happy. But a few things with that. There's the old pump car again. When you come up to a railroad track now, you see a sign like this, right? It says railroad crossing. You know what it said in the old days? Look out for the cars. You drive your horse and buggy up the road there, look out for the railroad cars. And you'll see that in pictures over and over and over again. But not look out for the train, look out for the cars. It's just kind of pretty unique. I live in Barron, and I did a book called The Blueberry Line that came through Barron. And that's a depot that still exists in Barron. And I got that picture. I said, I got to put that in the book. But somebody spilled ink all over it. 2 or 3 days later, it looked like that. And I guess I'm kind of proud of that too. But a guy that was a real good model maker. I came down to the Menomonie show when they were back in the high school here, middle school. And he said, I made a model of that. He said, my mom used to live there and she wanted me to make a model of it. And I said, gee, I'd be interested to see it. I'll bring it back tomorrow. He lived in Minnesota someplace. So he brought it back, and there's the model. Color didn't come through very good there. And I said, if you're ever interested in selling it, he said, yeah, it's Sunday night came, about ready to go home, and he said, I don't have a job. I really need some cash. That's home on my layout right now. I paid more money than but I tried to build one of those, and it took me I didn't get anywhere with it.
Thanks for saving it.
I added the order board here and some people, and stuff. But yeah, so now that building still exists. They made it into a coffee shop. I was just there yesterday. It's a coffee shop called the Blueberry Line Coffee Shop. It's owned by a bunch of Mennonites. Food, coffee, fantastic. If you ever get to Barron and want to stop in for a cup of coffee and a treat, I encourage you to do it.
Now, over on the table here, we have a lantern from the Blueberry Line and a ticket from Rice Lake Dallas and Menomonie Railway. They started the railroad because Line did not want to put a track in, so local folks built it. Showed that it was a profitable line on the railroad wide. So that was only in existence as Rice Lake Dallas.
Herb, I'm sure, has got the only lantern for Rice Lake Dallas and Menomonie. So, yeah, pretty neat. All right, I'm going to jump around a little bit. That's the first book I did. I didn't come here to sell books, but if you're all interested, you're welcome to buy them. You know, I do have some here and stuff, and I'll get into that. I did the Cornell line. That ran from Chippewa Falls out through Cornell to Hannibal. What are some of the other ended at Huey, Holcomb, and stuff like that. So this is a Lake Wissota bridge. Yeah, I say it's all something interesting. You know, I found that original track ran through where Lake Wissota is now. But when they built that big Lake Wissota dam, it flooded that whole area, so they had to reroute the train up through here. That's pretty neat. There's that Chippewa Valley line. The one thing I'm proud about that, it took me 10 years to get all the stuff for that book. It didn't take 10 years to write it, but a lot of the people that gave me the stuff are no longer around. So fortunately, I got into some really good collections. I have spent hundreds of hours on those machines. You go through old newspapers, because in the old days, everything that happened on the railroad was recorded in the paper, I guess, because everything came in on the railroad. And so the local newspaper, when the trains come, would go down to the train station, make notes, talk to people and stuff. And it's so fascinating. You're just history in front of your eyes. So now, fortunately, for my last book, there's a site called newspapers.com. You can search online, some newspapers. And so a couple of the towns are online, not all of them, unfortunately, but it saves going down and trying to go through and find that stuff. You put a keyword in, you know, Viroqua train. Everything that's got Viroqua train pops up on the screen. What? Park Falls line, interesting about that is, I ran from just north of Rice Lake, a place called Tuscobie, up to Park Falls, through all kinds of little towns. Radisson, Coudray.
Winter.
The last 60 miles of that, there were 60 side tracks where they brought in lumber and logs off that. It was a logging area. When I started that book, I said, I don't think I'll find anything for that. You know what? That book is thicker than any other book I have, and it cost me more, so that's $35. It cost me more to get it printed because it's more pages. But I was fortunate to get a bunch of stuff. Spring Valley line. Spring Valley, most of you know, that train ran from Woodville down to Spring Valley, out to Elmwood, and it went out to a little town called Weston, where there's a big sawmill. Yeah, it's really interesting to try and find the old roadbed for that. And Spring Valley is right down, the old Galley River goes right through Spring Valley. And rivers have a tendency to do what in the spring? And that flooded that town. I got a bunch of pictures. I don't think I'm here. Flooded. So they got smart and they built this thing up here. And it's an earthen dam. But it was the largest one in Wisconsin, the country at one time? I don't know. It's a big recreational area now. But you know what, Spring Valley, why they built a line out there? They had a steel mill. There is still iron around Spring Valley. A friend and I got back in where they mined. We talked to the landowner and got permission. And you pick up a rock, and you can still see it's all rusty. All the iron in there. It's just not profitable. But what they would do, this is molten iron. They would form little loaves of iron. You know what they called that iron? Pig iron. Because those little loaves looked like little piglets. And they ship it out by railroad all over the country, and then they smelt it down wherever they do to make steel and stuff. So it was quite a steel manufacturing place. It's where the ball fields are down there. If you drive down there,
Part of the part of the building is there just off the ball.
and it's falling down. I think they're going to take it down because they're afraid people are going to try to get up in there and get hurt. I don't think I didn't include a picture. Okay, the Ellsworth line ran from Hudson down through River Falls to Ellsworth. And the reason that line was built, every one of my other books had a lumbering background. You know what they had in River Falls? They had to get rid of, export? Flour. They had flour mills. I think they had 7 at one time. And you can't eat that much bread. I mean, down at River Falls. They shipped it out. They sent it to Lake Superior and sent it out in boats up at Bayfield. And so it's quite an area. This is a way freight, it's called, going out there. It also had a branch that ran up to Stillwater. So it ran across the river, St. Croix River, then up into Stillwater. There's one of the flour mills. They couldn't figure out how to get from River Falls to Ellsworth. Ellsworth is up here. River Falls is here, right on the Kinnickinnick River. And how are we going to get up there, you know? So they built a channel right through the rock. It took them 3 years to figure out how to get through there, get on the Ellsworth. And this is Cascade Street, and this is Spring Street. You know where this is right now? If you go down here, you won't see it. It's right in the middle of UW River Falls campus. They filled it all in, put what, lots? I don't know what buildings right there. You get on the far side down there, and it's a trail and little bridges and stuff like that. But that's pretty cool. It took them 3 years to figure out how to do that, and they finally did. Blasting a lot of rock and stuff. There's that blueberry line. The blueberry line that we talked about originally ran from Rice Lake down to Cameron to connect to the Sioux line. Then they wanted to go to Menomonie. So they went down through Hillsdale, Dallas. They stopped at Ridgeland. They never made it to Menomonie. They had an obstacle in the way. It's called hills. And there's no business between Ridgeland and Menomonie. They're a Wheeler, but it already had a railroad. So they didn't go any further. Then they went north from Rice Lake up to the Lakota Ray Indian Reservation, a place called Reserve, up through Birchwood and McConna and Campy and stuff. So that had a special interest. In the old days, there weren't enough people to haul just passengers normally. So they put passenger cars on with the freight cars. And they were called accommodation or mixed trains. They're a mixture of freight and passenger. That's a book I just talked about. All my books
are any of these lines still there at all? Not many.
The blueberry line from Cameron to Barron is now Canadian National Track. There's a sand plant out west of Barron that's not doing real good right now, but has been. And also just outside of Barron, there's a large propane facility. And almost every day they bring over 10 to 20 tank cars. It's unbelievable how much business that is. So that's rebuilt, obviously, to higher standards. But that part. Other than that, no. What I'd like to do is, they're called abandoned branch lines. They go off the main line and stop. So nobody hardly took pictures of that stuff. You got to really, search for that kind of stuff. Everybody's, well, you go on the main line here, there'll be a train coming within half an hour. You go down to Spring Valley, you might sit there 2 days or 3 days before a train comes through, So they didn't have any pictures. And I have my books available in 2 bindings. This is called Spiral, and this is called the glued binding. The books are exactly the same. These look better on the shelf because they have the name on them. These are much nicer to open flat and read, and they outsell the other one 4 or 5 to 1. But if I was you, an average person getting one, I'd probably get a coil. And I'll say, if you have any pictures you want to share, like I say, every time I do a picture show, I do pictures that aren't in the book, and I like to get something new. And if anybody's got something, I'd appreciate it. I'm working on the Coon Valley line now. Ran from La Crosse to Stoddard, Chaseburg, Coon Valley, Westby, and Broqua. You know about that area? Pretty interesting. It ran from La Crosse down the Mississippi River, up on the bluff to Westby and Broqua. And you talk about the hills going up there and stuff, and the climb. But That's down in Vernon County. You know what the big crop was down there? The biggest thing, they don't do it anymore. Tobacco. Unbelievable. Rockwell had, what, 7 tobacco warehouses by itself? Every little town had some. You drive down through there, you see the old tobacco drying barns out in the fields yet, where they'd harvest it and hang it up to dry till they go ship it. So it's just so much history. It's really interesting. I'm getting so much stuff. I wanted the book done by now, and it's not done. In fact, I'm going to make it into 2 books. I got so much stuff. So, but it's really fun. I talk fast and furious, don't I? You don't want to make it so long people are bored. You don't want to make it so short you got your money's worth. You did pay to get in, didn't you? You forgot to collect for them? Yeah. So I think, I got to do this. I'm not done. I'm a member of the Barron County Historical Society Museum, just outside of Cameron. We have over 40 buildings. And this year, I think we're going to start a big new visitor center outside there. And it's really cool. Here's the schoolhouse. We have the jail, the church. We have weddings there, doctor's office, old log cabins, obviously big sheds with farm machinery. There's just about everything. It costs $10 to get in, but it's worth every penny of it. Years ago, I went out there, and they had this little train depot from Cylon. I went inside there. It's just a mess. And I said, it's kind of messy. Would you like a little help with it? Well, you get involved. And so I cleaned it up, repainted inside, outside, and stuff like that. Then I said, it would be nice if we had a caboose. The Sioux Line Railroad started right at Cameron. If you know anything about Sioux Line, they're pretty big regional. They brought their materials up to Cameron on the Omaha, dumped them off. And they built east to Bruce and west to Turtle Lake. Was the first rails of the Sioux Line. So it's really a historic area. So I wanted a Sioux Line caboose, and so I found that one and got it. It's really bright red. It doesn't look like it at all, does it?
Yeah, no,
if you could see the computer screen, it's bright red.
It's like a fire engine.
Yeah, fire engine red. And it's open. Kids love going up in the cupola up here, leaning out for their friends and stuff like that. So we open and make it accessible and so on. It took 5 years of summers to restore it. Because when we moved it in, I hired it obviously. And you'd think they look pretty good, but water had gotten into it. We had to strip off a whole side. That's $2,000 worth of wood right on that side right there. But I went back to original wood instead of just some Menards cheap stuff. And inside, it's all restored now. Original stove was in there. So a guy at the museum cleaned it up, though. It didn't look, you couldn't get in there when I first got it. But,
Where'd you find it? Where did you find it?
I really looked out. I drove all over Minnesota and Wisconsin. Anybody had one, not going to sell it. This was at the museum in Spooner. And they had bought it, thinking we're going to restore it. Well, 2 things. They didn't have any money, and they didn't have many volunteers. And the Sioux Line did not go through Spooner. So they wanted a caboose, but wanted Omaha or Chicago Northwestern. So I asked them, no, we don't want to sell it. I said, I understand, you got a caboose. They called back a few weeks later, you still interested in the caboose? I said, yes. Well, we'd like to talk to you. So I drove up there. And I don't know what they paid for it. I'll tell you, I got a little money into it. I got mostly time, but I fundraised the whole thing. Anyway, so I say I bought it. People donated a lot of money. Okay. They wanted $16,000 for it. And I said, I don't have $16,000. Yeah, well, we'll talk. Say, you go in the museum. So I went to the museum looking around and stuff. Came back. They said, how about $13,000? I said, I'll make it work. Yeah, it had all the parts in it. They were terrible shape, but everything was there. Sometimes people buy them for a cabin, and they cut them all up and everything. Everything was there. And then it cost $3,200 to move it down from Spooner here. So that's $16,200 before you even start doing anything.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
It was really fun to do.
I know.
You know?
That's why we do it.
That's why we volunteer,
Right.
So Hey, guess what I built for my home layout? It's a model 251. By the way, it's red. I could turn my computer on, but I might jiggle up the connections. It's bright red. Sitting in front of the Baron people. There's Jerome Foods on mine. Jerome Foods, a big food. I am fortunate enough that I get to play with real trains up in Duluth on the tourist railroad. That's what I did in my book box. I got flyers. In the top of my book box, I got flyers for the museum and our county museum. Not that box. I'm not sure. It might be. I was going to hand each one of those, and we got kind of delayed and stuff. So I get to actually run the trains up there quite a bit. So it's a lot of fun. We have dome cars. We run all the way up to 2 harbors, 26 miles. It's a great museum. It's one of the top rated ones in the country for stuff. It's got historic equipment in there. I'm not going to try and show you everything. And they just restored a steam. It's going to be running this summer a few times. People like to watch steam run.
Where's the engine from?
Yeah.
It's like the northwestern.
It's a Duluth and Northeastern logging railroad. So it used to run, then it sat quiet for a while, and then they had to restore it and stuff, and they got it going. There's so much moving parts on there, and it's got to be tested by the government and everything. If it doesn't pass the test, you go back and redo it and so on. The 2719, if you know anything, that was down in Carson Park, is up there, and it's in great shape, but it needs a 15-year inspection, which means you got to tear it apart and go through the whole thing again. So what they want to do is run this one, and then when its time's getting close to done, redo the 2719, get that running for the next cycle and stuff. Because people love to watch steam. Now I read it. I must have reached the end now if I have that there. Want to flip the lights back on? So did you find the flyers?
Is that you?
That's one of them. We got both of them. Yeah, can you pass them out, please? You got any questions? So if you want to take one of the flyers, if you are interested in a book, they're in the boxes there. We didn't get them up in front here yet, and so I'd be glad to.
And we've got some flyers for the Colfax Museum here too.
Okay, right there. Well, I appreciate your coming tonight, showing interest, not falling asleep. So.
More of a comment. I think I bought all your books.
Thank you.
I just really appreciated reading them and all the work that you had to put into them. And I had always said to myself, I'm going to write a letter of appreciation or something. Well, I never got around to it. At least I can tell you tonight directly, thank you very much for all that you've done.
Yeah. You know, that means more than anything else. I don't make much money on these books. You know, but I learned something I can share with people forever. Like I said, a lot of the people that gave me stuff are gone. You know, it's irretrievable again. So I've just been I thank the good Lord every day He gave me the time to do that, I guess, and so on. So.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I've got your books right up here. So bring them in.
All right.
And we saw your card at the cafe.
Yeah.
That's how I
we
called
did.
you out.
You've been there, huh?
That's how we learned about you.
Oh, there you go.
We were at the Blueberry Cafe and at the restaurant there.
Yeah.
Ate, and then we saw your book on sale, and we're like, we gotta get this guy down here. But we were paging through the book, and it was the one about Menomonie Rice Lake line, and it stopped in Richland, and I'm like, well, I didn't go to Menomonie. Does he know anything about Menomonie? And we looked up and saw he had all these other books, and said, he's got to know something.
Most of you are from Menomonie. The 2 books that have Menomonie are the Spring Valley line with the Omaha and the Chippewa Valley with the Milwaukee.
Right.
So they have Menomonie stuff in it.
Awesome.
That's what MC don't make notes.
That's right.
Say everything.
I'm gonna stop the recording here.
We're on overtime tonight.
Tell if that's okay.
Usually is when you're the owner.
John Cartwright's a friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Because White House well, so I see White House and stuff like that. I grew up in Melrose, you know that?
You betcha. White
And I
House.
had a house in Pleasantville.
That's where my folks' house was. They're both gone. My dad worked for Gunnison Chevrolet.
Oh, I lived on Hollywood Eve. If you were born in the house,
Yeah.
they caught fire a bunch of
Yeah.
times.
So what's your name? Okay. Interesting.
And this is not talking about Joe, and he said there were no cuts.
Very nice
I want to
building.
stop
You got.
I
recording.
was. I was
Very
just
nice.
in Alaska for a show, and I didn't take time. I said, I should go that way again.
I think it's Cumberland County, not state, so they couldn't get the funding, so they renamed roads. See between 108 and 108. Funded to fix the road.
That is interesting.
Gotta have the expert in that.
Down there.
That recording.
No, it's recording.
Really?
Is that the same training as?
Wow, that's cool. Yes.